Okay, now this is a part two to my last video talking about the sanctions that were just put in place as the second part, the kickoff of the second part by the Department of Treasury against Russia and Iran for meddling in the 2024 election. This was announced today, December 31st. Happy freaking New Year. But this confirms that EO 13848 is in play, which puts us right now in the second 45-day time period. And then the next stage is after all the assessments and fines and sanctions and all done are these 45 days. We will probably see more. Then it goes to President Joe Biden, Mr. Immune President Joe Biden, and he gets 30 more days. That puts it out into March, which is no more deadlines for anything else. Now, these are the sanctions that are being put in place because of this. This is actually what they're doing. Now, if you remember in the executive order that I read, the people that are part of these things, their possessions are specifically addressed and what gets taken by the United States government. So keep that in mind as I read this. This is the sanctions implications released today by the Department of Treasury. As a result of today's actions, all property and interests in property for the designated persons described above that are in the United States or in possession or control of United States persons are blocked and must be reported to the OFAC. In addition, any entities that are owned directly or indirectly, individually or in an aggregate, 50% or more, one or more blocked person are also blocked unless authorized by the general or specific license issued by the OFAC or exempt. The OFAC's regulations generally prohibit all transactions by U.S. persons or within or transiting the United States that involve any property and interests in property or of designated or otherwise blocked persons. In addition, financial institutions and other persons that engage in certain transactions or activities with the sanctioned individuals may expose themselves to sanctions or be subject to an enforcement action. The prohibitions include the making of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, or services by, to, or for the benefit of any designated person, or the receipt of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, and services from any such person. Non-U.S. persons are also prohibited from causing and conspiring to cause U.S. persons to violate United States sanctions, wittingly or unwittingly, as well as engaged in conduct that evades U.S. sanctions. OFAC's economic sanctions enforcement guidelines provide more information regarding OFAC's enforcement of U.S. sanctions, including the factors that OFAC generally considers while determining an appropriate response to an apparent violation. The power and integrity of OFAC sanctions derive not only from OFAC's ability to designate and add persons to the SDN list, but also from its willingness to remove persons from the SDN list consistent with the law. The ultimate goal of sanctions is not to punish, but to bring about a positive change in behavior. For information concerning these offenses, seek removal, blah, 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 blah. And then it has an actual list. You can go to a list for information of individuals that were sanctioned today. So these are Russians, Russian people, Russian companies. These are different types of related people in the process of trying to interfere with the United States election. Now, in 13848, it was very, very specific when it was drawn up. And it was drawn up by the Trump administration, obviously not by the stable genius, but by the Trump administration. And it very, very specifically goes into not only what constitutes people being involved and what makes them basically, sanctioned, but it says what happens to their property. If these people have 4 communications companies, the United States government can literally go to the most valuable one and say, we get that one. If they have 2 different car companies, they can just help themselves to the most valuable car company. That's all being sanctioned. That's all from the punishments that the Trump administration put directly into EO 13848. And on the 21st, which was the end of the first 45 days, the report, the assessment that actually mentions and does a press release about the evidence that was found and the countries that were involved and all that, turns out, according to that executive order, doesn't have to come from the United States. It could come from a foreign intelligence organization, as long as they have proof and it's actually shown that they did interfere. And there is no other person on earth I found more fitting to deliver this with a big smile on his face, and no one even paid attention. It didn't even make the national news here in this country. Ukraine. President Zelensky on Saturday, 12/21, put out a press release regarding evidence showing international interference in the United States election. That was a press release, an official press release. This today, this filing from the Department of Treasury, states these people that were sanctioned were doing it since 2020 and beyond. This is what I've been talking about when I'm talking about the executive order and the meaning of it. And if you follow the different investigatory bodies of the United States and you look back in their press releases for the last 8 years, they've been developing teams and developing strategies and specific divisions pursuing these leads. And all of this goes back to 2020 and beyond, goes back to the Mueller report. So when I said this is going to happen, this involves the entire world. January is going to be historical. It is going to change everything. And it's going to be a worldwide movement. So it's not going to be the Democrats doing anything. But if you listen to the rhetoric coming out, Donald Trump himself admitted today for the first time he knows something big's coming. That's the executive order the Trump administration put together. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll repeat, stop getting stressed out in the what ifs that could happen when people take over. There's a lot that has to happen before they actually get into office, so stop stressing. And there is a hell of a lot of things besides simple math that shows there were issues. This is official. Happy New Year. It's not over. So stay diligent, stay educated, and be kind. We are all in this together. Yeah. It's not over. Looking forward to seeing you, President Harris. God bless.